That year, the Shoemakers had another litter. Sue liked one of the boys in the litter and offered him to us at a reduced price under a co-ownership with them.
If you're passionate about Basset hounds, this podcast is for you.
This is WOEBGON, the Basset Hound podcast. I'm your host, Don Bullock. I would like to welcome all of you to the WOEBGON podcast. It's a podcast all about Basset hounds. This is a podcast for Basset Hound owners and admirers. If you'd like me to answer a question or cover a specific topic that's related to Basset Hounds, please let me know. In this episode, I'd like to share the beginning of Buddy's story. He was our first AKC champion. In addition, I'll share some of the information on the beginnings of our breed and a standard for the breed, as well as a common health issue, a question related to Basset Hounds and their eating, plus more. I'd like to remind everyone who's listening to the audio version of WOEBGON, the Basset Hound podcast, that show notes including photos from each episode can be found on our website, WOEBGONBassets.com. After our experience with Sam that I explained in episode 5, Sue and Andy Shoemaker were upset that Sam wasn't able to show. Pam and I fully understood, and we were still interested in getting a show dog from them. That year, the Shoemakers had another litter. Sue liked one of the boys in the litter and offered him to us at a reduced price under a co-ownership with them if we were interested. Again, Pam and I made numerous trips to visit the puppy. While the puppy had a lot of features that I liked in Sam, he was a little smaller. Pam and I talked things over. Eventually, with the encouragement of Sue and the support from her, we decided to get the puppy. Since the puppy was a little smaller than most Basset hounds and we'd started out naming our show dogs after beer, oh, there goes the girls. Pam just left the building. Oh well. Well, now that Pam's left the building and all the girls have stopped howling, I can get back to Buddy's story. Since the puppy was a little smaller than most Basset hounds and we'd started out naming our show dogs after beers, we decided to name him Shoefly's Bud Light. It seemed very appropriate, and at this point, most of our friends already knew we were naming our dogs after beers. When we brought Buddy home, we placed him in the same exercise pen that we'd used for both Chili and Sam. He really enjoyed being in the center of attention in our family room. Now, just like Sam, Buddy was a picky eater for a while, and Pam did make puppy balls for him for a while we were trying to get him ready to show, and she put him in a shallow dish rather than the tray that we used for Sam. I must say that Buddy was very cute, but he was even more stubborn than Chili was. As Buddy grew up, I entered him in matches and eventually shows, just like I did with Sam. Buddy liked the social life of the shows and even made friends with many of the other Bassets. His best friend was a Basset named Wilson. In order to improve my showing techniques, I decided to take Buddy to a handling class. The teacher, Julie Kay, was very experienced in handling Basset hounds, which truly helped. Buddy, however, wasn't a good student. Julie was constantly trying to help me get him to do what he was supposed to do. Both of us became frustrated, but we didn't give up. Even though Buddy didn't seem to enjoy the showing part of class, he loved to go. He enjoyed being around the other dogs, especially the Bassets. Every week when we got out of the car in the parking lot, Buddy would look around looking for the other dogs. As soon as he saw another Basset hound, Buddy became very excited. He was even more excited if the other Basset hound was his friend Wilson. We, along with Wilson's owner, went to many matches. Back then, the AKC required each club to hold matches in order to hold their licensed dog shows. These matches were even better ways to practice than handling class. The two boys seemed to share winning fairly evenly, but it's difficult to fully recall all the specifics. It was so long ago. While Buddy's showing improved somewhat in the handling classes and matches, actual shows were a different experience. Buddy just didn't want to stand still when he was supposed to. Whenever I got down on my knees to stack Buddy for the judge, he'd keep moving his feet. I remember specifically going over to Sue's house to get some input and help from her to see if she had any tricks of the trade to solve the problem. Even that didn't really help much. One week in October, the Basset Hound Club of America had their national specialty show in San Diego, which was close by. Pam and I took some personal necessity leave off from work and took Buddy to the show. We'd never been to a BHCA Nationals, so everything was new to us. It was a lot of fun until it came time for Buddy and me to enter the show ring for our class. As usual, Buddy became stubborn and wouldn't stack well for me. The judge even made some comment about Buddy's bite. I wasn't sure what he meant, but the comment did upset me quite a bit. After Buddy was back in his crate and I'd settled down, Sue tried to explain what the judge was referring to. Something about a wry bite. Sue assured me that it actually wasn't a problem and he'd eventually develop an excellent scissors bite, which he did. A few months later, we were showing at the very first Burbank Kennel Club show. Buddy actually cooperated and showed fairly well that day and won Winner's Dog, Best of Winners, and Best of Opposite Sex to Best of Breed to a rather famous Basset Hound bitch named Hot Toddy. The judge really liked him. As a result, Buddy got his first points towards his championship. That was an extremely exciting day. I remember Sue and Andy inviting us out to breakfast at a local restaurant to celebrate, which was sort of became a tradition over the years. Buddy remained difficult for me to show, however. I continued struggling with stacking him. In spite of being uncooperative, Buddy was awarded Winner's Dog at a few more shows along the way. He was very notorious for begging for treats from me and other exhibitors. I remember specifically him begging across the ring from our good friend Pam Heine on several occasions. He'd see Pam and just stare at her, trying to get her attention and subsequently a treat. I wish there was a way to use that desire for treats to get Buddy to stack better. Judges often had the dogs line up in the show ring according to their assigned number. These numbers were supposed to be randomly assigned. For some unknown reason, Buddy and his good friend Wilson were often next to each other in the class. Remember, Buddy was rather small for a Basset Hound. Well, Wilson was a large Basset. It was very comical to watch the judges' eyes as they looked at the dogs in the ring. It was obvious that their line of sight changed dramatically when they went from tall Wilson to short Buddy, or the other way around. I continued to be very frustrated with Buddy, so Sue volunteered to show him at 2 shows at the Del Mar Fairgrounds. That weekend, I didn't even dress in my dog show outfit just in case Sue changed her mind. As promised, Sue took Buddy into the show ring on Saturday. From the outside of the ring, I watched intensely as she struggled to stack him. As with most shows, that happened several times before the judge made his selections. While the top 4 Bassets in Buddy's class got their ribbons from the judge, Sue sort of stomped out of the ring with Buddy. As soon as she got to me, she handed his lead and said, "He's a little shit." Immediately, I felt relief. I knew that the problem wasn't me, it was Buddy. Sunday's show didn't go much better, so the problem was obvious. At another show, Sue's husband, Andy, decided to take Buddy into the ring. Andy had been an outstanding Basset Hound handler for many years before Sue sort of took over those duties. He couldn't understand why Buddy wasn't winning. No, I can't begin to tell you what Andy said in his rant as he exited the ring. Most of it was incoherent, but he basically wanted to know why we're even trying to show this unruly dog. I still, however, continued to show Buddy. The fact that he won a few times was encouraging. He even won Best of Breed once at a show in Ventura with just a few Bassets and no Basset Hound champions. For me, showing Buddy had become a challenge. I wasn't ready to give up on him. Plus, outside the ring, Buddy had become a great buddy to me, and the two of us got along real well together. At this point, I was unsure if Buddy would ever finish his championship. At the time, there weren't a lot of males being shown, so each win was only worth 1 or 2 points. Accumulating the 15 points required for a championship seemed to be a long way off, much less earning the 2 majors that are required for an AKC Championship. Now I need to explain for my listeners who don't show what all that means. Each show is worth points to those who are awarded winner's dog and winner's bitch. Those points range from 1 to 5 points at each show, depending on the schedule of points that are set for specific parts of the country by the AKC. The points are calculated based on the number of males or dogs or girls, bitches, being shown in the classes. Those are the non-championships at the show. Any shows that are worth 3 or more points according to the point schedule are considered to be major wins. Every year, the AKC resets the point schedule for each region based on the number of class dogs and bitches being shown or bred in the region. More importantly, the percentage of the shows that generated an entry large enough to be a major were also factored in. The AKC tries to limit the number of majors available for each breed within each region of the country. By limiting the percentage of majors available, AKC is assured that these are indeed special wins, not ordinary wins. In order to earn an AKC championship, dogs or bitches must have at least 2 major wins. Yes, there'll be a quiz on all this later after the podcast. In essence, these point schedules are AKC's way of making sure that dogs deserve their championship. About this time, we had Buddy and our other 2 Bassets at the time at the Basset Hound picnic. As usual, they were all in an exercise pen under our canopy. I was giving them a treat, but when I got to Buddy, I suddenly noticed there was a huge bulge on his left hip. Obviously, I quickly became concerned and brought Pam over to show her. She immediately got Sue to come over to where the boys were. Upon close examination by all 3 of us, we guessed that the bulge was some sort of cyst. That assumption was based mostly on the way it felt. Cysts tend to be more liquid-based and squishy than tumors. Immediately, we discussed what should be done. Since Buddy was co-owned by Sue and Andy, we decided to take Buddy to her veterinarian, Dr. Cho. Even though Pam and I were very confident in our vet skills, this situation warranted taking Buddy to a veterinarian that Sue fully trusted. He'd been working with her Basset Hounds for many years and knew the breed, plus the show aspects of working with her dogs. The next day, Sue set up an appointment for Dr. Cho's office for that week. When we arrived at Dr. Cho's office, he immediately took us into the examination room. He put Buddy up on the examination table and examined the bulge. Almost immediately, Dr. Cho said he thought it was a cyst, but of course needed to operate on Buddy to make sure. Now here's where the big issue comes in. Movement is one of the things that every AKC judge uses to judge the dogs. It's also against AKC rules to perform any surgery that would modify a dog's movement. Dr. Cho knew this, and he told us that he wouldn't know if the surgery would affect Buddy's movement until he saw what was going on. But he'd be very careful not to cause any changes in Buddy's movement if it was all possible. Since Sue had full trust in Dr. Cho's abilities, we consented to him performing the surgery. He already cleared his schedule and allowed time for the surgery that day, so we took Sue out to lunch while Dr. Cho did his work. Later that afternoon, we got a call from Dr. Cho's office that Buddy was ready for us to pick him up and that the bulge was indeed caused by a cyst. When we arrived at Dr. Cho's office, Buddy was on the examination table with Dr. Cho standing next to him. Dr. Cho explained to us that Buddy had a large cyst that was sort of intertwined with the muscles of his upper part of his left rear leg. He told us he did his best to remove the cyst without affecting the muscles, but obviously he couldn't make any promises. We'd have to assess Buddy's movement after he had fully healed from the surgery. Then Dr. Cho walked over to a shelf and handed me a large glass jar with something in it. He explained to me that what we were seeing was the cyst that he'd removed from Buddy's leg. It literally filled the jar. Fortunately, the healing process went well. Within a few weeks, Buddy was moving with no apparent changes in his movement. We still couldn't show Buddy because almost all surgeries require an area to be shaved. It's a good idea not to show a dog until all the hair has grown back. That meant that Buddy would miss several shows, but he could be shown after there wasn't any evidence of being shaved and all the stitches were gone. While I'm mentioning medical issues with Buddy, I thought I'd also mention the ongoing problem we had with Buddy's anal glands. We were constantly having to have them expressed by our veterinarian. For some reason, they didn't naturally express themselves. I'll go into more deep information on this and this condition later on in this podcast. We tried all the remedies that our vets recommended with no success. It was getting to the point where Buddy's anal glands had to be expressed very often and they were becoming impacted. Our veterinarian suggested that they be removed. We discussed the problem with Sue and again suggested getting a second opinion from Dr. Cho. Sue again arranged an appointment with Buddy to go see Dr. Cho. We took Buddy into Dr. Cho's examination room. He assessed Buddy's anal glands and expressed them. After Dr. Cho expressed Buddy's glands, he quickly turned to us and said, "The worst anal glands I've ever seen." Sue said, "Coming from you, that's really bad." She knew he'd worked on a lot of her dogs over the years. I won't go into any details except to say that his assistant had a lot of cleaning up to do afterwards, including a portion of the wall behind the examination table. I really felt sorry for her. It was a stinky mess to clean up. After a subsequent conversation with Sue and Dr. Cho, we scheduled for an anal gland removal operation the following week. Again, we decided using Sue's veterinarian instead of ours was a good idea. She had a lot of trust in Dr. Cho. Evidently, he had performed the same surgery on one of her Bassets in the past. Fortunately, anal gland surgery doesn't require much of an area to be shaved, so Buddy's showing wasn't delayed for very long after the surgery. For now, we'll end Buddy's story here, sort of on a high note, and continue it in episode 7 of WOEBGON, the Basset Hound podcast. Since I mentioned the anal glands and the issues that we had with Buddy, I thought it would be a good opportunity to explain what they are and how to eliminate the problem if you happen to see it in your Basset. Anal glands are used by dogs to mark their feces with their own special scent. According to my research, anal glands usually get blocked when your pet is overweight, sedentary, and if the pet's poop is too small or soft. They mainly block when there's inadequate fiber in the pet's diet. Blocked anal glands are a relatively common problem and in most cases are simple to treat. Left untreated, blocked anal glands can lead to infections and abscesses. Symptoms of blocked anal glands include scooting, that means rubbing the bottom or anus on the ground. A foul, fishy smell, it's very stinky. Nibbling and licking at the anus or the lower back. Pain when pooping. Suddenly sitting down in discomfort. Looking round at their back end suddenly. While anal glands can be expressed by pet owners, I strongly recommend that you don't do that and you contact your vet if you think your dog has blocked anal glands. Leaving them untreated can easily lead to infections and abscesses. Pet owners won't know if that's happening if they express them themselves. There are few simple precautions you can take to reduce your dog's chance of anal gland problems. First of all, you can keep your dog slim. Overweight dogs generally have weaker muscles around their bottom, which makes the gland emptying more difficult. Keep your dog in a healthy weight and feed them good quality, complete food. You also may want to have regular checks if your dog frequently suffers with blocked anal glands. They may require regular vet or veterinary nurse visits to have them checked. You'll quickly become an expert at spotting the signs of an anal gland problem. Adding extra fiber to the dog's diet can help firm up and bulk out their poop. As a result, when your dog goes to the bathroom, your stool will press the anal glands and help them empty. Consult your vet for recommendations on how to add fiber to your dog's diet and when to expect results. Blocked anal glands are often simple to cure. Emptying. Your vet will feel inside your dog's bottom and try to empty their glands if necessary. I strongly recommend that owners never attempt to do this yourself unless you've had instruction from your vet and you're confident in doing so. Anal glands can burst if they're squeezed too hard or in the wrong way. Medication may help. Medications such as anti-inflammatories and other antibiotics should only be used when your vet feels they're necessary. Surgery, as we did with Buddy, is also an option. If your dog has ongoing anal gland problems that can't be cured by emptying or medication or adding things to the diet or reducing weight, all of those things that we've mentioned, your vet may recommend removal of the anal glands, as was the case with our Buddy. As with anything that's medical in relation to your dog, I strongly recommend consulting a licensed veterinarian, not just taking advice from others or sources on the internet. They have no idea what's going on with your specific dog, and they don't have the training. Just because we had Buddy's anal glands removed, it's not something that I recommend. We only did it after the recommendations from 2 highly trusted vets. I've mentioned in previous episodes that Bassets were bred to hunt. In France, various Basset breeds were used in what they called chasse à terre. That's flushing game out of the brush so that hunters could shoot them. Being low, they were suited for working in thick cover while their voices enabled the hunters to know where they were and which way they were heading. Their slow speed meant that when they were imported into England, it wasn't long before they were used in the typical English hunting fashion, which the French referred to as chasse à coeur, a pack of hounds chasing game with hunters following on foot. While that's the reason Lord Galway imported Bassets into England, he soon decided to concentrate on hunting with his beagles instead. In fact, he went on to be a very important figure in beagle hunting. Other hound hunting enthusiasts took up the hunting with Bassets. One was Major Heseltine, to whom Lord Galway wrote his letter describing his Basset hounds. Another was Lord Onslow, who eventually bought Lord Galway's Basset hound pack. But perhaps the most prominent figure was Everett Millis. He is often referred to by some as the father of the modern Basset hound. All of these people and others were very important to the beginning of our breed. More about them will be covered in future podcasts. In previous episodes, I've mentioned the importance of the Paris Dog Show in 1863. And that dog show actually issued a catalog which listed Bassets as follows: straight-legged, short and long-haired; crook-legged, short and long-haired; Bassets from differing areas of Europe were also mentioned, including Baden Bassets, Bourgeois, St. Domenico, Illyrian, and Hungarian Bassets. This shows that Bassets were widespread throughout Europe, stretching from Brittany to Budapest and from the Black Forest to the Balkans. I must remind you that this includes all versions of low hounds. They were not all related to our modern-day Basset hound. We even have an actual photo of one of the Bassets that was entered in that show. In fact, it's very similar to an engraving that was supposedly published in Ouvre Complete de Buffon in the 1830s. Now, after I recorded all of this, I found another Basset hound photo from that same catalog. I have to admit that neither one of these looks really like a Basset hound that we have today. Now, it's important to note at the 1863 Paris Dog Show, there were no standards for any of these Bassets or any of the breeds like we do have today. We do, however, have a description of some of these Bassets from that period. In his volume, Le Vénéré Français of 1858, de Canteloup describes some of the Basset's ancestors. The artisan Normand, quote, long body, short legs, large black, long leathers, that's the ears, lovely head, lovely voice. The Basset is full of good qualities. It always has a loathing for any beast, but rabbit and hare are particularly favored quarry. However, Bassets are a perfect pure breed for hunting roe deer, wolf, and boar. Usually white with black or fawn markings, often their hair is all black and thick with reddish touches under the eyes, over the chest, and the base of the legs. The other varieties of Bassets are primarily distinguished by very pronounced arching of the front legs. Their color is the same as that of the straight-legged Bassets. The Bassets are naturally very much slower than other hounds, end quote. De Canteloup was the most famous French hound breeder of this time, and his admiration for the Basset was quite clear. His Bassets were the type that were mostly imported into England at the time. Now we can use his descriptions to help us picture the Basset hound predecessors and what they look like. It's important to note that around this time, hunting qualities prevailed over conformation. De Canteloup looked for a type with nearly straight forelegs, which would neither slow the dog down or drain its energy when working in difficult terrain, brush and briar. He also preferred a slightly more compact breed and the head reminiscent of a former Chien d'Artus. Louis Lane, however, placed greater importance on the pleasing eye. His dogs had magnificent heads with long, well-turned ears, similar to the nobility of the old Norman breed, but their exaggerated crook front legs. They were called jambes torres in French, slowed them down, and they lacked enthusiasm when hunting, having more reserved nature. These two types dominated, existing side by side for around 20 years. But as time passed and the quest to produce a dog with the best qualities of each line, most huntsmen in both France and England ended up preferring the mix of the two strains to a varying degree. By this time, several of prominent breeders, in addition to Canteloup and Lane, were breeding Bassets. Thus, on 26 May 1889, during a meeting of Club Basset Français, the name Basset d'Artus or Artus Basset was selected for this new breed in France. Artois is a region in northern France. According to Randy Fredrickson, someone who's well known as a Basset hound historian, both the Chien d'Artus, favored by Canteloup, and the Basset Normand, favored by Lane, both became extinct. My apologies for the bark that you heard in that last segment. Emmy was just letting all of us know that the gardener had arrived. Anyone that's close to or near our property or on our property gets barked at, so that was what was happening. My standard myth in Basset Hounds for this episode deals with the size of a Basset Hound. I remember having a conversation with a professional handler who had shown many Basset Hounds over the years. She stated that the breeder that she worked with said that the AKC standard tells us that the Basset Hound is a large breed. This girl is not the only person I've heard reciting this myth. I've even seen it in print. I also heard it from a breeder who was working towards her AKC judging license for Basset Hounds. She even told me that there was a minimum weight for dogs and bitches. Nothing in our current standard says anything about weight. She most likely got that information from a book or an article. Now, as an aside, Bassets can be too fat or too thin, but those can be accounted for in other sections of the standard. They are not related to size. I specifically remember many years ago a judge at a specialty telling a breeder owner handler that his bitch was not considered because she was too small. Another judge at a specialty told me that my bitch was too small. He stated specifically directly to me that if she had been bigger, he would have considered her for the win. On the other side of this issue, at least 2 specialty shows, I've observed bitches that had done a lot of winning under many different judges and were definitely less than 14 inches at the shoulder blade, and the judges in both cases told the exhibitors that their Bassets were too big. Evidently, in all these cases, the judges didn't care for what they considered to be large or small Basset Hounds, even though it's not part of our standard. I've also seen exhibitors who knew that their Basset Hound was too tall take it in the ring for judging. In only a few cases did the judge ask for a wicket, and that's a special device that's sanctioned by AKC for measuring dogs. And if they measure too tall, the judges can actually disqualify the dog. One oversized Basset in particular won over my Basset at a show in Ventura, California. As an exhibitor who was in the ring with my Basset, I could have asked the judge to measure his Basset, but I chose not to do so because the exhibitor was someone who's very prominent in the breed. It wouldn't have been a good move for me to question his dog. I heard later that the dog's owner had eventually decided to stop showing him because she knew he was too tall. I've had some, including Basset Hound breeders and judges, state that the optimum height for a Basset Hound is 13 inches. This is also mentioned in a book by Mercedes Braun called The New Complete Basset Hound. According to her, quote, "It should be obvious that the best size is around 13 inches, end quote. Some Basset Hound enthusiasts I've talked to over the years have even stated that this is mentioned in the standard. Well, it's not there, folks. It's not in our standard. By the way, we'll see in later episodes how some other comments on the standard made by Mrs. Brown have been mistaken as actual quotes in the standard. She carried a lot of weight in our breed for many years. The size should not be a criterion for judging our breed, except for those that are over 14 inches. Our standard only has one thing to say about size. Quote, size, the height should not exceed 14 inches. Height over 15 inches at the highest point of the shoulder blade is a disqualification, end quote. There's absolutely nothing in the AKC standard about Bassets having to be large or small except those that are too tall. Where this particular myth came from is hard to tell, but it's not true. While some prefer them to be large, others may prefer them to be small. Size is not an issue when judging, according to the AKC standard, unless they're too tall. As an aside here, I'll mention that there is a lot of evidence that points to the possibility that some of the earliest Basset Hounds were somewhat smaller than what we have today. For those who are watching the video version of the podcast, this is an illustration titled A Day with Bassets at Cambridge from March 16th, 1884 edition of the Illustrated Sporting and Dramatic News. As I zoom in the lower two scenes, notice the comparison of sizes of the Bassets and the Hunters. This is just a hint of the evidence that perhaps Bassets in the past were smaller than they are today. This will be a topic for future episodes. By the way, I have an actual original of this illustration hanging on my dining room wall. It's one of my favorite Basset Hound illustrations. I'll be mentioning some of that evidence in future podcasts. I need to make it clear here I was not referring to proportions when discussing size. Obviously, that's something that's important to consider and part of the standard, but that's a topic for another day. Most of the Bassets in the examples I mentioned were well-proportioned Bassets. I didn't get any listener questions again this time, so I selected one that I found on Facebook. It's one I feel is very important for many Basset Hound owners. Quote, "Are Bassets hungry all the time, or is mine just fat? I have to pick her dog food bag up or she will climb in it and I don't want her to get sick. She's a puppy and she's small because she was the runt. But dang, this girl has a big appetite. I don't leave food out all the time because she'll just eat it all." One of the biggest issues I see with Basset Hounds is that many are overweight. Some are grossly overweight. That's beyond fat. This is very hard on their backs and can lead to back problems as well as other health issues, such as anal glands not expressing themselves as mentioned earlier in this podcast. My answer to this owner would be, just because your Basset was, you say, the runt, please don't try to make up for that by overfeeding her. That's not healthy. I personally don't know of any Basset Hound breeders or owners who leave food down for their Bassets all the time. While some Bassets, especially when they're young, can be very picky, like Sam was in episode 5 and Buddy was, most Bassets I know will eat anything and everything they can get into. Overeating in Bassets is a big problem. If food is around, most Bassets will eat it. Some friends of ours showed up at a show recently. They had their older dog with them because he had eaten almost a whole bag of dog food. He had somehow gotten into a bag of dog food in the closet and eaten most of it before they got home and found him. He was huge and would have eaten the whole 30-pound bag if they hadn't have stopped him in time. They had him at the show because they were showing their younger Basset and didn't want to leave him home. They wanted to make sure he was okay. Fortunately, the dog survived. I've heard of many similar stories, including one where a Basset had eaten a whole roast he took out of the owner's refrigerator. Another ate most of a birthday cake at a birthday party that was left on the table while the family was off doing something else. Leaving any food anywhere where a dog can get to it is very risky. If you haven't listened to the information on bloat in episode 5, may I suggest that you do so. According to some researchers, overeating can be a factor in cases of bloat. Most lists of suggestions to prevent bloat encourage dog owners to feed at least twice a day and not free feed them. Since your girl is a puppy, I'll mention what we used to do with puppies. When we had puppies, we fed them 3 times a day. We did that until we felt they were old enough to skip the middle meal. That happened to be somewhere around 9 months, depending on the dog. We never left food down, nor did we add a lot of treats to their diet. Our adults are fed twice a day, as I mentioned earlier. Once fairly soon after they wake up, which is usually between 5 and 7, and sometime between 5 and 6 p.m., and that's all depending on our schedule. We currently give our 4 Bassets a measured amount of food, both morning and evening. Each Basset has a specific spot in our home away from the others where they eat. We do this so we know how much and which food each dog gets. Having them eat separately also allows us to mix in medications into their food when necessary without fear of another dog getting it. While we only monitor our dog's actual weight when we visit the vet, we do closely monitor all our dogs by sight. If we feel one is looking too light or too heavy, we make adjustments in their food and/or exercise. Treats are given at specific times for specific reasons. Our dogs don't get a lot of treats during the day. Over the years, we've found that just a few pounds can make a big difference in a dog's health. I know it can be very difficult to avoid overfeeding Bassets. They can really give those sad looks that simply said, "Feed me. I haven't eaten in a month. When's dinner?" You all know that look. Our Lexi has mastered that look. She can look so pathetic, like she hasn't eaten for a long time, and especially uses that look when anyone's standing close to the treat jar. While it's difficult to resist her, it's best for her health not to give her an extra treat. I strongly recommend that all Basset Hound owners limit the access their dogs have to food. Our quote of the day is from Gabrielle Zavin. She's an American author and songwriter. She said, "Did you know there are over 300 words for love in canine?" I'm sure Heidi, who's in this photo, surely agrees. My sincere apologies for the delay in posting this episode. December last year was just far too busy for me to get everything recorded. On top of all the seasonal preparations for the Christmas holiday, Pam and I ended up with a lot of medical appointments. Fortunately, nothing serious, just things that had to be done. I made this episode a little shorter than most of the others on purpose. I need your input on topics you want me to cover. Since most of you haven't been going to the website, I've decided to give you my email address here. It's donbullock@woebgonbassets.com. That's donbullock@woebgonbassets.com. For those of you on YouTube, you can see it on the screen. Please use this address for questions and topics you'd like me to cover in this podcast. Remember, you can also leave a recorded audio question or an email question through the website, WOEBGONbassets.com, and going to the podcast page. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. I've also opened up comments on YouTube. They will remain open unless I start receiving inappropriate or fraudulent or spam comments or ads for Bassets. Speaking of ads, I've noticed that even though my YouTube channel is way too small for me to earn any money from it, YouTube has decided to add advertising. Please understand, I have absolutely no control over these ads, nor can I control the videos that YouTube suggests. That's all based on your viewing history and YouTube's algorithm. I'm hoping that those of you who are listening to WOEBGON, the Basset Hound podcast, are recommending it to your friends and those who love the breed. I appreciate all who are helping to spread the word. That's the best way for this podcast to grow. Also, thank you to those who give the podcast a thumbs up on YouTube and a high score wherever you listen to podcasts. All that helps as well. And thank you all very much for listening.
WOEBGON, the Basset Hound podcast is published in visual form on YouTube the first Monday of every month. A full-length audio version of each episode is published 1 week later wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out our WOEBGON Bassets website for show notes including photos from every episode. You can also find links to the podcast plus information on Don and his wife Pam plus their Basset Hounds. WOEBGON, the Basset Hound podcast is produced, researched and hosted by Don Bullock. The music is Do Your Ears Hang Low played by Nasrality from the Philippines. It's available royalty-free on Pixabay. Please give this podcast a thumbs up on YouTube and a high rating wherever you listen to podcasts.
Until next time, this is Don. Thank you very much for listening.